Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Myth. So today we're going to continue the series at an analog in your pocket. Are you just happy to see me? And today we're going to be talking about the Sega 16A core on the arcade multi side of things. This core has been out for a while, but I just wanted to review it, talk about the best games on the platform, and just give it a little bit more of a showcase, because as far as the arcade multi-cores are concerned, I feel like Sega 16A definitely doesn't get its due. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, down below hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, one of the #1 games to play here is going to be Shinobi, and I understand that this has been ported a ton of places, but it got its life started on the Sega 16A, and it is an absolutely outstanding version. And the best part about this version compared to some other ports is that it's going to be the quote-unquote uncensored version, and that's not to say there's anything offensive in Shinobi, but basically Sega took whatever character they wanted and threw it into the game without permission, so you will very shortly be seeing Spider-Man make an appearance, and that was patched out in more recent revisions. But you need to be prepared to learn this game and to start dying a lot. It is a one-hit, put you back to the beginning of the level situation, so it's got that old school arcade difficulty that people do love. This is the type of game where it's not that long to beat once you actually learn it, but learning it is going to take you a decent amount of time. Now as we move on here, you're going to see Marilyn Monroe's in the background, and very shortly Spider-Man himself is going to crawl down the wall. On this version on 16A, you're going to also be seeing Batman as well. It just basically throws whatever it wants in, and it's pretty hilarious that Sega did this without asking any permission whatsoever. So when you think Sega 16A, at least for me, the first game that comes to mind is going to be Shinobi. But leave me a comment down below and tell me the one game you think about when you think about this platform, or maybe you really even haven't played many 16A games whatsoever, but trust me, there's a lot of fun to be had here, and it all starts and leads from Shinobi. This is just that classic Sega that everyone from back in the day remembers. It is that old school difficulty. It's going to test your patience. You're going to die a lot, but you're going to absolutely want to continue to try to make progress forward and see how far you can get. This is basically like the ghouls and ghosts of the Sega world here, except you only get one hit, not two. So if you've never played Shinobi before, or if you've never played the arcade original version that features Spider-Man for some strange reason, this is definitely a title I can't recommend enough on the 16A side of things. But it's not just Shinobi that I'm here to talk about, of course not. There's a ton of other awesome games on the 16A board, one of my favorites being Fantasy Zone. This is just an absolutely bright, cute, and colorful shmup that plays differently than pretty much any other shmup you're familiar with. You have free range of motion in this game. If you move left or right, the screen is going to scroll with you, and you can dictate how fast or slow it is depending on your inputs. This is just one of those classic Sega games, and it absolutely looks spectacular on the Analogue Pocket screen or on the dock, because Sega just used so many bright, vibrant colors here. All these greens, these pastel pinks and yellows, they just have such a vibe to them, and when you have them on the Analogue Pocket screen, it is absolutely an awesome time to look at. And this game has so many fun levels, so many fun bosses. It is classic Sega through and through, and it is relatively challenging, but this is the type of game that's perfect on Analogue Pocket. It takes like 25 to 30 minutes to see the ending, and you're having fun the entire way through. And again, the bosses in this game are just so much fun. I think this is probably the best looking game on the Sega 16A, and it's got a lot of depth as well. You get a full item shop where you can upgrade your ship depending on how much money you collected in the previous level. But I would say this game, as far as the 80s is concerned, has the best Sega soundtrack ever put to a video game. Go ahead and listen for 30 seconds and I'll be back with more 16A games you need to play. Every single time I hear the Fantasy Zone soundtrack, I am happy, and I'm happy to hear it here coming across on Analogue Pocket as well, so definitely check this one out if you haven't. Now on the deeper cut side of things, this is Quartet. It is a run and gun action game where you get a jetpack and just get to fly around the world looking for the boss and his key. This is such a simple game to pick up and play, but it gets quite challenging in later stages, and it's fun to have a pretty much action platformer on the system. You'll see you start off with a jetpack and you have full range of motion, just like you did did in Fantasy Zone, this almost feels like the companion game to that, except when you get into later levels, it'll turn into a pure platformer. But this is the type of game, maybe you've seen it on Analogue Pocket under the listings, but you had no idea what Quartet was, so you just didn't open it up. This is one of those classics that you definitely have to experience at least once. How it works is at the end of every stage there will be a boss, you defeat him, you grab the key, and you go through the exit. But this game has a ton of levels and a ton of fun and challenge, and of course you can bring a second player to the mix as well, which is going to make things even more fun. But I love what Quartet does with the overall verticality of the game. You'll see up there is the jetpack. I lost it by getting hit in the previous stage, and when you get power-ups and get hit, you need to recollect them, or else you're going to have to go into the next stage a bit underpowered, and if you're holding the key, you have to touch it and pick it back up before you get to the exit, or you're not going to be able to escape. This, again, just like Fantasy Zone, is the type of game that's so easy to pick up and learn, yet you're going to be challenged, and you're going to have a ton of fun, and I feel like most people maybe haven't heard of Quartet before. Leave me a comment down below and tell me if you're aware of this game or if you didn't know about it. And you'll see here, definitely pick up everything after you get hit. I missed it there and I have to run back and pick the key back up to get out of the exit door. This game is hectic, it's frantic, it's awesome, and if you bring a second player, it is all the more fun, and I love what it does diversifying the gameplay up as well, because when we get into the third stage, now we're not in that open area. We've got ladders we need to climb, enemies coming out everywhere. It just basically changes itself up enough to stay current and fresh and make you have fun the entire time. So if you've never played Quartet before, this is my recommendation to you. Definitely just check it out. Even if you don't have an Analogue Pocket and you just watch these videos because you're thinking about getting one, I think you should play this even if it is just on MAME. So give it a go. I think you're going to have a lot of fun. Now do be aware that I have a video on the Sega 16B. It is a different heading in the Analogue Pocket. This is basically an upgraded version of the board. And when people think about the Sega 16 arcade board, I really feel like they think of the 16B well before the 16A, and they kind of get it muddled in their heads as to what game runs on what platform. So if you want to know all the best games to play on the 16B side of things, I will leave a link in the description below, because Sega basically revised their own hardware, made it more powerful, and then released a ton of Hall of Fame good level arcade games on it. So don't forget, 16B is different than 16A, and I always feel people just kind of get them confused. But moving on to another game, this is Alex Kidd, and I stupidly jumped directly into the card on this one. This is a 2D side scroller, and it is a ton of fun and has kind of that same pastel-y look that Fantasy Zone has, just a little bit more muted. This is definitely a hard game though. You barely ever have a weapon. You're mostly trying to avoid things coming towards you, so you need to read the screen, see what's coming first, and then basically react to it. This is just that old school platform before you get to things like Mario or Sonic. This was the 80s style of platform, and it works here so well. And this is one of those things, I just love how the game is actually visually set up. You'll see in the backdrop, those are just basically matte painting curtains that have been hung up, so you're kind of even confused where this game actually takes place. It is such a weird vibe here. Kind of reminds me of Super Mario Bros. 2, where basically it was a dream, or Super Mario Bros. 3, where it was a stage play. But this, again, is just classic Sega, and one that most people probably haven't checked out ever, or at least recently. So tell me down below, have you ever played Alex Kidd? And did you play it in arcades, or have you played it on Analogue Pocket? And just like Fantasy Zone, this game also has an absolutely spectacular soundtrack. About 25 seconds here, and I'll come back and show you a few more games that I think you should definitely play. Just an absolutely awesome soundtrack married to a super fun side-scrolling platformer that if you've never played before, you definitely should check out. If you haven't played for some years, it's probably time to take another look at Alex Kidd and give it one more playthrough. Now moving on to Body Slam, this is a very fun, charming game that I just do not understand whatsoever. It is a wrestling game, and I played a ton of those in my lifetime. There's just something about this one I can never quite figure out what I'm supposed to do, so maybe you can leave me a comment down below and tell me, because this is the intro to this match. Watch what happens. This is all in real real time, and I managed to even spell my initials wrong, VGU, not VGE. Totally nailed that one there. They just run directly towards me, and the CPU pins me within 3 seconds. The game is already over. I mashed every button, and I could not get out of the pin, and I still to this day can never really figure out what you're supposed to be doing here. But it is a charming game. It is based on some real-life Japanese women's wrestlers as well, so maybe this is the type of thing that's going to do it for you as far as gameplay is concerned. I always want to like this game, I can just never quite figure out what is going on, but it is another one of those 16A games that pretty much everyone's at least seen screenshots of, and I definitely recommend checking out and trying to figure it out for yourself. Now onto games with very unfortunate intro sequences. This is SDI, and I'm sure you understand why that is unfortunate there. Strategic Defense Initiative. This is basically the same thing as Fantasy Zone with a completely different vibe going on. You do have a static screen, you are shooting, trying to protect the planet, but it is definitely not anywhere near as fun, charming, or cheery as Fantasy Zone. That's not to say it's not a fun game, it's just one of those titles I don't really ever love the overall vibe of this one. Mechanically it's fun, but it just doesn't have that colorful charm of Fantasy Zone. But those are the games on the 16A I'm showing you here. There's a couple others I didn't feature, but I'm basically here just to tell you, you should check out all of the other games. Don't forget, every single game has settings that you should check out to make sure you're playing well. Short of that, we're done, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.